I've been reading a little bit about David Hume, and I wanted to talk about his ideas and impressions. Um, the notion goes that any idea we have, any like formulation of something, is an impression that we have of some external experience. So that I only know what the color red is because I've perceived something that is red, or I've looked at the color red. And he gives evidence of this by saying a blind man wouldn't understand what red is or couldn't comprehend what red is because he hasn't experienced the impression of redness. And that, I think, makes sense. Um, so I was thinking about, imagine if I had put on like red goggles my entire life. And so everything I see is red, and so some, shade of red. I wouldn't think that everything is red. I would just think that these are, you know, this is just what the world looks like, right? That everything has this like red tint to it, right? Some things are more red, some things are less red, but everything is a shade of red. And then one day I take the goggles off, and now I see um, the differentiations between red and blue, and now I'm able to have the like an adequate impression of what red is because I have an adequate impression of what blue is, right? Or of what green is. I can look to blue and green and say these are not red, right? And I can look at red and say this is red, right? So I have like a concrete impression of what red is because I know I have a concrete impression of what blue is, right? And so this works very well for external things. So I was thinking about like the impression of being, right? So if like what could this entail, the impression of being, if I look at myself as an example and I say, okay, I know that I exist, um, or like you could say, I think, therefore I am. I, I I have trouble like pinpointing where I get the impression of like my being, of what constitutes me. I don't know that I can have like this external experience of what entails like me-ness. And so it's sort of as if I'm living with the goggles on, and it becomes challenging to like remove them because I don't experience the world outside of, my situatedness. I experience the world through my situatedness, which isn't to say that like, and this is a separate topic, but that I'll ignore for now. But just that the idea is just essentially that I can't really get entirely beyond myself to like look at myself and say this is what being is. And so it becomes difficult to like have the impression of being in Hume's sense, um, because I don't have anything to compare it against. Right? It's just as if like everything is the color red, and I'm just saying, well, I wouldn't really call this red because I have nothing to compare it to. Right? I don't know what like not redness is. Or I don't know what like not being is because I have, a singular experience. I'm like in, there's an inness quality of being, so that I can't, or it would be like very challenging to externally point to something and say this is being right here. And if I can't point to being and say this is what it is here, how can I have the impression of being? So it seems difficult. It seems like a challenging, um, or it seems at least like a challenge to Hume's idea or Hume's notion of impressions, because while I believe myself to exist, I don't know that I have the impression, or I believe myself to like possess being, I don't know that I can point to an impression of my being. Like, I know that I am, or I believe that I am, but do I have the impression that I am? I don't. I think that would be a challenge that I can't I can necessarily point to and say this is what this is my emness. Like, this is like what constitutes my being. So just some thoughts, things I was thinking about. Yeah, thank you for watching. Let me know if you have any thoughts.